Asha Thomas, a 35-year-old Indian maid living in Dubai, was never meant to cross paths with power, but her secret affairs with Sheikh Khalid al-Nuaimi, Sheikh Rami al-Saif, and Sheikh Tariq al-Mansour would ignite one of the city's most explosive scandals, ending not in love or wealth, but with her body buried deep in the desert sands, in the heart of Dubai, a city that sparkled with wealth and whispered secrets, lived a 35-year-old Indian maid named Asha Thomas. She was an ordinary woman in an extraordinary city, unnoticed, silent, and seemingly invisible among the towering glass buildings and golden sands. To her employers, she was just another migrant worker, a woman who cooked, cleaned, and blended into the background of their perfect lives. But Asha's story was not one of simplicity. Beneath her quiet expression and respectful manner, she carried a secret that would one day destroy her and shake the lives of men far more powerful than she could ever imagine. Asha had arrived in Dubai a decade earlier from a small town in Kerala, India. She had left behind a difficult marriage and a child she rarely spoke about. Her only goal was to earn money, send it home, and start fresh. But life in the City of Gold was not as kind as she hoped. Her first years were spent in cramped workers' quarters, where she scrubbed floors for long hours and endured endless demands from wealthy families who barely looked at her. She learned quickly that Dubai was a place where power dictated respect and money decided everything. Her fortune changed when she was hired by the Al-Nuaimi family, one of the most influential names in the Emirates. Their mansion in Palm Jumeirah shimmered like a palace from a dream. It was there that Asha first met Sheikh Khalid al-Nuaimi, a man in his early 40s with an air of authority and charm that drew everyone in. He treated her differently from the others, polite, attentive, almost gentle. For a woman who had known little kindness, that attention felt intoxicating. Over time, small conversations turned into stolen glances, and soon a secret relationship began to grow in the shadows of that grand villa. Sheikh Khalid was careful, but not cautious enough. He arranged private meetings, expensive gifts, and even whispered promises of a better life. For the first time, Asha felt valued, desired, seen. She started wearing perfume he had given her, carrying handbags worth more than her monthly salary, and saving money he slipped discreetly into her hands. What began as comfort slowly turned into a dangerous dependency. Asha believed she was in control, but she didn't realize she had stepped into a game where loyalty and love meant nothing against pride and power. As the months passed, her confidence grew. She learned how to keep secrets, how to move unnoticed, and how to navigate the quiet spaces between the rich and their servants. But temptation followed her wherever she went. While working for Sheikh Khalid's extended family during a family event, Asha met another man, Sheikh Rami al-Saif, known for his ruthless business dealings and extravagant lifestyle. He was immediately drawn to her mystery, her quiet strength, and the danger that came with her forbidden presence. When he found out about her connection to Khalid, he didn't turn away, he saw it as a challenge. Within a year, Asha had found herself entangled in two powerful worlds, both led by men who would destroy each other if they ever learned the truth. She knew she was playing with fire, but she also believed she was untouchable. Her secret relationships provided her with more than luxury. They gave her the illusion of freedom in a city that kept women like her bound in silence. But greed, once awakened, never rests. Through Rami, she was introduced to Sheikh Tariq al-Mansour, a friend of both men and one of Dubai's most discreet figures. He was older, wiser, and far more dangerous. Tariq liked control, and Asha fascinated him because she carried herself with quiet defiance, something rare in his world. Before long, he too became part of her secret life. 3 sheikhs, 1 maid, each relationship hidden behind layers of secrecy and lies. Asha believed she could keep them apart, that her careful planning and quiet obedience would protect her. But power has its limits, and secrets in Dubai never stay buried for long. Asha's quiet double life, built on risk and desire, was about to turn into the very thing she had once feared most: a scandal too big to escape, and a mistake too costly to survive. Asha's secret life continued quietly for months, maybe years, without a single sign of suspicion. She had perfected her routines, learned to erase traces of her movements, and became skilled at balancing the demands of three powerful men without letting any of them know about the others. Her ability to adapt made her invisible in the eyes of most people, but it was that very invisibility that allowed her to move freely between luxury and danger. She knew the guards, the drivers, and the schedules of the households she worked in. She could slip in and out unnoticed, using her status as a servant to cover her tracks, but the higher she climbed in secrecy, the thinner the air became around her. She was walking on a thread that could snap at any moment. Her first mistake was one of comfort. With Sheikh Khalid al-Nuaimi, Asha had grown careless. He trusted her so completely that she began to stay in his villa longer than usual, even after hours. He had surveillance cameras installed throughout his mansion, supposedly for safety, but he rarely checked the footage himself. When Asha began meeting Sheikh Rami safe in the same villa while Khalid was away on business, she never thought those cameras could be her downfall. Rami had insisted that they meet there, calling it safer than hotels or apartments. Asha, too confident in her ability to manage the situation, agreed. She didn't realize that every movement, every glance, and every stolen moment was being silently recorded. Weeks later, the hidden recordings were discovered by accident. A technician hired to upgrade the security system reviewed the archived footage and stumbled upon scenes that should have never existed. The maid of the household, and a man known across Dubai for his wealth and influence. Within hours, the clips were copied onto a personal drive and shared among the maintenance staff. In a place where gossip traveled faster than light, the secret couldn't be contained. It spread first as whispers, then as screenshots, and finally as short, blurred videos passed between phones. By the time Sheikh Khalid became aware of it, the footage had already reached places far beyond his control. The scandal was too personal, too humiliating, and too dangerous to let out in public. Khalid, enraged and humiliated, ordered his team to find the source and erase every trace. But the internet had already taken hold of it. Copies of the videos began appearing on obscure sites and private online groups. The story of a maid involved with multiple sheikhs turned into digital wildfire. Asha learned about the leak one evening when she noticed the sudden silence in her surroundings. Calls stopped coming, doors that once opened easily were now locked, and the people who smiled at her now looked away. Fear settled in her chest as she pieced together what had happened. The men she thought would protect her were now her greatest threat. Sheikh Khalid's fury was unmatched. Sheikh Rami, known for his temper, felt equally betrayed. And Sheikh Tariq al-Ansor, the one she thought was her safest connection, was the most dangerous of all because his empire was built on silence. He had the means to make anyone disappear without a trace. As the scandal grew, so did the paranoia among the three men. Each believed that one of the others had leaked the footage to destroy his reputation. In a city where power meant everything, such a scandal could ruin political alliances, financial deals, and family honor. The sheikhs turned against one another quietly, sending private investigators, deleting data, and bribing officials to contain the chaos. But there was one loose thread they couldn't control: Asha herself. She was the link that connected them all, the woman whose existence could expose them further. As the pressure mounted, Asha knew she couldn't stay. She withdrew the money she had secretly saved, sold her jewelry, and began planning her escape back to India. But even as she packed her things, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching her. The same security cameras that had once betrayed her were now like eyes everywhere she went. What Asha didn't know was that the men had already decided she was a liability. In their world, silence was worth more than forgiveness. The videos had shown more than betrayal; they had revealed weakness, and weakness among the powerful demanded correction. In the glittering towers of Dubai, the quiet hum of wealth hid darker intentions. Asha's secret was no longer hers to keep, and her time was running out. Asha's disappearance began quietly, almost too quietly for anyone to notice at first. The people who knew her assumed she had gone into hiding because of the scandal. After all, the leaked footage had spread faster than wildfire through social media before vanishing mysteriously overnight. In the wake of the chaos, the three sheikhs she had once trusted cut all contact with her. Their phone numbers went dead, their guards blocked her from entering their villas, and her work permit was abruptly cancelled. To the world, she had ceased to exist, but Asha was still in Dubai, terrified and desperate to find a way out. She moved from one small apartment to another in the older neighborhoods of Dera, paying cash to avoid leaving a trace. She wore a scarf to hide her face and avoided talking to anyone for too long. Even simple things like buying groceries or withdrawing money made her nervous. She could feel eyes on her, even when the street seemed empty. Every white SUV that slowed down near her building made her heart pound. She knew she had angered men who had the power to make people vanish without a sound. Her only plan now was escape. Asha managed to contact a travel agent who promised to arrange an early flight back to India under a different name. She used what little money remained from her secret account, but the withdrawal drew attention. That same night, she noticed an unfamiliar car parked across the narrow lane outside her building. Two men sat inside, pretending to be on their phones. The next morning, the car was gone, but deep down she knew it wouldn't be the last time she saw it. Fear was now her shadow. 3 days later, Asha confided in a fellow maid, a woman from Sri Lanka who had once worked alongside her. She told her that she planned to leave the country within a week and that she feared someone was following her. The friend tried to convince her to go to the police, but Asha refused. She knew better than anyone that the powerful men she had been involved with had deep connections within the system. Reporting them would only make things worse. Her friend would later tell investigators that Asha's final words to her were chilling. She said she felt like she was being watched from every direction. On the night she vanished, Asha left her apartment around 9 p.m. She was dressed plainly, carrying a small black handbag and her passport. A taxi driver later confirmed that he dropped her off near Al Maktoum Bridge, where she said she was meeting someone who would take her to the airport. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. When she didn't return home or answer her phone the next day, her friend reported her missing, but the case received little attention. To the authorities, she was just another domestic worker who might have fled the country or run into personal trouble. A few days later, Asha's belongings were found dumped near the Dubai Creek. Her phone, handbag, and passport were missing, but her small suitcase lay open, clothes scattered across the sand. CCTV footage from nearby showed her car stopping briefly near the area at 9:47 p.m., but the driver's face was covered by a hood. The footage was too grainy to identify anyone. Rumors spread among the domestic worker community that Asha had been kidnapped. Some claimed she had been forced into a car by men in traditional Emirati robes. Others said she had managed to board a flight under a false name and was hiding somewhere in India. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Women like her did not just disappear in Dubai unless someone wanted them gone. Within days, the whispers turned into silence. No news outlets reported her case. No investigation was publicly announced. It was as if Asha had been erased from the city. The three sheikhs, now bound together by fear of exposure, made sure her name faded from every record. Her disappearance was covered under layers of influence and quiet payments. For most people, Asha had become a ghost, a name that existed only in rumor, a story people told in low voices before looking over their shoulders. But beneath the surface, something was brewing. The truth of what happened to Asha had not been buried completely. Someone knew where she went that night, and someone had followed her. In a city where secrets are currency and silence is survival, Asha's vanishing was not the end, it was the beginning of something much darker waiting to be uncovered. 2 weeks after Asha's disappearance, a group of construction workers stumbled upon something strange in the Al Qudra desert. They were preparing the ground for a new project when one of them noticed a faint shape beneath the sand. At first, they thought it was animal remains, but as they brushed away the dust, the outline of a human body emerged. The police were called immediately, and within hours, the area was sealed off. The harsh desert wind carried the smell of decay as investigators carefully unearthed what was left of the woman who had once lived a double life in the heart of Dubai's luxury. The body was badly decomposed, wrapped in a thin white bed, sheet tied with nylon rope. The desert had erased most signs of struggle, but one detail stood out: a gold bracelet engraved with the initials A.T. The name matched the missing person report filed weeks earlier by Asha's friend. When the forensic team confirmed her identity through dental records, the case of the disappearing maid became a murder investigation. But what should have been a pursuit of justice quickly turned into a controlled silence. The autopsy report revealed that Asha had been poisoned before she died. A strong dose of a rare sedative was found in her system, followed by signs of strangulation. It was clear she had not died peacefully. Her death had been deliberate, calculated, and meant to leave no trace. There were no signs of robbery, no personal belongings, and no clues except tire tracks that led nowhere. Whoever had done it knew how to erase evidence and, more importantly, how to make sure the investigation didn't go far. Within a day of the discovery, the story began to spread through local media. Body of missing maid found in desert. The headlines read briefly before disappearing from online platforms. News sites that published details were quietly instructed to take them down. Social media posts vanished mysteriously, and witnesses stopped answering phone calls. It was as if an invisible hand had reached out and pressed delete on everything that connected Asha to the powerful men she had known. The three sheikhs were questioned separately. Sheikh Khalid al-Nuaimi arrived at the police headquarters with a team of lawyers and a calm demeanor. He denied any connection, insisting he hadn't seen Asha in months. Sheikh Rami al-Saif claimed to have been out of the country during the time of her disappearance, presenting flight records and business documents as proof. Sheikh Tariq al-Mansur, the most influential of the three, spoke only once through his attorney, declaring that any rumors connecting him to a household worker were fabricated. All three had airtight alibis. The case began to lose air like a punctured balloon. Behind the scenes, the investigators knew there was more. Asha's phone, though missing, had last connected to a cell tower near a private compound owned by one of the sheikhs. But the moment they requested the security footage, they were informed that the cameras had been under maintenance. The evidence was gone, the witnesses were quiet, and the officials assigned to the case received warnings to let it rest. In Dubai, silence is not just compliance, it is survival. Asha's friend, the same woman who had reported her missing, tried to speak to the press, but every attempt was blocked. She began receiving anonymous phone calls telling her to leave the city. Within a month, she quit her job and returned to Sri Lanka, leaving behind only a short note that read, "They made her disappear." No one ever saw her again. The official report eventually described Asha's death as an unfortunate personal matter. Her remains were quietly cremated, and her ashes were sent to India without ceremony. Her family received a sealed envelope with a small sum of money and a message of condolence from an unnamed benefactor. There was no mention of murder, no acknowledgement of the three men whose lives had intertwined with hers, and no closure for those who had known her. But in private circles, in the quiet gatherings of Dubai's elite, the story of Asha Thomas lingered like a stain that could not be scrubbed clean. Whispers circulated among maids, drivers, and guards that one of the sheikhs had ordered her death after the scandal became impossible to contain. Some said she had tried to blackmail them for money. Others claimed she had threatened to expose their names publicly. Whatever the truth, it was buried with her beneath the desert sand. The glittering city moved on, untouched by guilt, while the story of a maid who reached too close to power became nothing more than a forgotten secret. But not everyone forgot. Somewhere among the few who still remembered her face, there were questions that refused to fade. And one of those questions was who had really killed her, the men she trusted, or the silence they commanded. Months passed after Asha's body was found in the desert, and her story began to fade from memory. For most people, it became just another rumor whispered briefly before being forgotten. Dubai continued to shimmer, the skyline rising higher each week, as if the city itself had buried her beneath its sand and glass. But for one person, the silence surrounding Asha's death was unbearable. A local journalist named Lina Farouk had followed the case from the beginning. She had seen the short-lived news reports vanish, and had heard stories from workers too frightened to speak on record. Something about Asha's disappearance, the quick burial of evidence, and the quiet dismissal of the case felt wrong. Lena couldn't let it go. Late one evening, while she was reviewing old files in her small apartment, an unmarked envelope slid under her door. Inside was a plain black USB drive and a note that read only 2 words. *, watch this. *, Lena hesitated but plugged it into her computer. What she saw confirmed everything she had suspected and more. The drive contained dozens of videos, the original unedited recordings from Sheikh Khalid's villa. The footage showed Asha not only with Khalid and Rami, but also with Tariq. There were timestamps, full clips, and scenes that made clear she had been involved with all 3 men. But there was something else, something that made Lena's heart race. In several of the clips, a 4th man appeared in the background, young, unrecognizable, often holding the camera or setting it up before leaving the room. Lena froze the footage and zoomed in. It wasn't a technician or a servant. It was someone familiar to Asha, someone who appeared in several of her private photos retrieved from her phone records. After days of research, Lena discovered his name: Ravi Kumar, a maintenance worker from Asha's building. He had been her boyfriend long before she became involved with the Sheikhs. The realization struck hard. The videos had not been stolen by hackers or leaked by mistake. They had been recorded intentionally by someone close to her. Through hidden sources, Lena pieced together the final truth. Ravi had found out about Asha's secret relationships months before the videos surfaced. Overcome by jealousy and greed, he had secretly recorded her encounters using hidden cameras that she never knew existed. When he realized how much the footage was worth, he sold it to a contact who specialized in online blackmail schemes targeting wealthy men. What he didn't understand was that by doing so, he had triggered a chain of events far beyond his control. Once the videos reached the wrong hands, they spread among circles of power where reputation meant life or death. Ravi disappeared soon after the leak. Some believed he fled the country. Others whispered he met the same fate as Asha. No record of him was ever found. Lena took the evidence to the authorities, hoping it would finally expose the truth. But the next morning, she was contacted by an official who quietly advised her to drop the investigation for her own safety. Within days, her articles were taken down and her press credentials were temporarily suspended. Someone with influence had made sure the story would never see daylight again. Still, Lena couldn't let it rest. Before giving up, she copied the entire contents of the USB drive onto multiple encrypted folders and sent them to a trusted contact abroad. She knew the evidence might never lead to justice, but at least it wouldn't vanish completely. In the final entry of her notes, she wrote, *Asha didn't die because she sinned. She died because she trusted the wrong people in a city where truth is buried under luxury. As the months turned into years, Asha's story became an unspoken warning among the domestic workers of Dubai. Her name was never printed again, but it was whispered in back alleys, workers' dorms, and kitchen corners late at night, a reminder that secrets can be deadly, and that love mixed with power leaves no survivors. In the glitter of Dubai's endless night, her memory lingered like a ghost no one dared to acknowledge. The Sheikhs continued their lives untouched, their reputations polished and their scandals erased. The videos remained hidden, locked away by those who wanted the past forgotten. But deep within that silence, the truth waited patient, buried and unbroken like Asha herself, beneath the shifting sands of the desert that had become her grave.